We'd like to start out by thanking our valuable sponsors. Sense of Satisfaction by Cricket is the place for all your fragrance needs. Plus, she's got products to heal what ails your skin and your hair. Shop at scentsbycricket.com. Special thanks to our valued sponsor, John Travis, a financial coach and certified Kingdom advisor with Richard Young Associates, a registered investment advisor. Thanks goes to Anna Patterson, my sister in the Lord who faithfully gives to this ministry every month. And to our newest sponsor, LaToya Gerard of Preach the Word Worldwide Network. She is a valued sponsor and a major encourager regarding this ministry. We need and would love to have you as a sponsor. Absolutely no gift is too small. Please note the info regarding giving throughout and at the end of the show, and help us spread these testimonies around the world. Please note that the views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily the viewpoints of our sponsors. It's time to hear the story, make the connection, learn the lesson, and gain the wisdom. Are you ready? Let's get charged and be changed. The Sister Speak Brother Break Show. Conversations on grace, healing, and deliverance. This is Marcy Bush. Come on, let's journey together. But you didn't have any illnesses or anything in childhood?
No diabetes, none of that now. None of that now.
It's like just in 06 that. And now, when were the miscarriages? When did they happen?
Now, that's what caused the congestive heart failure. I was diagnosed with postpartum cardiomyopathy, which is when your heart is weak because you had multiple pregnancies. No diabetes. They diagnosed me with blood pressure after that. But I had none of that. I wasn't taking no medicine.
Okay. But God. So, as you all see, we are not the same as we were, not dressed the same as we were in the last segment. You know, life happened. And we thought we'd be able to get back together sooner, but we weren't. But I'm glad that Jennifer is back with us today so that we can continue to glean from her testimony. So that our lives can be changed. So, Jen, when we left off, we were talking about 2009, and I know that you mentioned the anxiety and depression that had come along. Can you kind of fill us in there?
So, going into that, the anxiety, the mental, the depression, and I say this, and I'm being very transparent. It shows up a lot, even now. And I got the victory. See, the enemy don't just do stuff and leave. He comes with more tactics. We're not ignorant to his devices. He's not a mastermind, or he's not all seeing, all knowing. He come with the same tricks, but he come in a different way.
Yes.
And he still shows up. But I declare and decree I still got victory.
Yes.
And some days I may give him a couple of seconds or a minute or two. But I pull up out of that.
Right.
Because it's a spirit. It's a spirit of heaviness. I don't know if you ever been through it, sis.
You don't know if I've been through what? Depression.
I mean, I know you have, but the heaviness of it.
Ma'am.
When you in the bed and you're laid and you want to, you see yourself getting up, moving, going to the bathroom, moving, doing. You have it in your mind what you're gonna do that day, but you're like, it's like this. And you just laying there and you see yourself doing, and before you know it, it ain't done.
Right.
You have given that thing 2 or 3 days. Because it's a heaviness, it's a weight. So what I've learned, that the Bible says, put on the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. as believers, we have to put praise in our lips and praise in our mouth, and that heaviness got to come up. That spirit of depression got to come up off of you. You know, you might got these first 20 minutes, baby.
Yeah.
And I didn't clean the bathroom up, but I'm getting up.
Oh yeah, if you ever tap into praise,
my God,
because I mean, and what I know is that number one, depression is, and it may sound like I'm not having compassion, and that's not it. I've dealt with it, so I know its tactics. Mm-hmm. Depression is something that is when someone is it's like you're looking at self. Everything is self-centered at that moment because you're thinking about how bad you have it. You're thinking about what's going on. You're thinking about, and it depresses. That's because we're looking at self. If you ever look at God, move that thing, like you said, when it's praise, and you reposition yourself, and you remember the great big God we got, and you begin to magnify Him and glorify Him, even if you begin to help somebody else, it will help bring you up out of that. Because you can't pull them up if you still down.
That's right.
When you're pulling somebody else up, you have to move to a place. And so, like you said, that praise, and you've told us how over and over and over and over, it is the thing that pulled you through. It'll pull you out. It'll pull you through. And so, yes, ma'am, I'm grateful that you have that praise. And like you said, depression, whatever is in your past, it'll show back up. It's going to show back up because the enemy knows when you're free, but he wants you to forget that you are.
Yes.
And so he will show up over and over in whatever form. And so you came up out of it, you keep, because he'll come back and knock.
Yes, and show up in different areas that will. And one of the things God been dealing with a lot, even in prayer, is triggers. That thing that triggers this thing to manifest, because you said something about self-sin. It's amazing how our stuff could become self-sabotage in our lives.
Oh yeah.
And the thing about it, enemy don't show me your stuff.
Right.
He showed me my oh, you didn't do this, and you didn't accomplish this, and you look like this, and you look like that, and you look like this. But see, we have to come back with praise. I don't care what you say I look like. I serve a God that made me, and He made me fearfully and wonderfully. One of the things that I battled with for many years was how I looked. Because He planted that seed from a little girl when, as I said earlier, they used to sing a song about, because I was always the biggest and always the heaviest out of everybody I went around. So so kids are cruel people, and some of it is because of their own stuff.
Absolutely.
But they were cruel, and they sung songs. So that thing, that seed was planted from a child. Till even as a grown woman.
Right.
And so that was one of the biggest things that the enemy fought me about, of how I looked. And I go back and look at pictures when I was in high school. I said, oh, I was fine. I said, I let the devil mess my mind up all these years.
Right.
I look at my pictures.
If I could be the size I was when I was in high school, yes.
I let the devil fool me for so many years, thinking I was so large and so big.
But he didn't win.
I mean, I was cute. I was fine. I was like, that was me in high school. And I thought I was the biggest thing.
Right. Okay. And what he does, he messes up what we see. Yeah. Just like, how they talk about with people that suffer from anorexia or bulimia. Like I don't care how, they can be bones. But when they look in the mirror, that's not what they see. They see themselves as big. And it's the same thing with what happened to us and millions of other people.
Millions of women.
And look men. Look in the mirror and believe the lie of the enemy. Here's something that one person said, and that's what's so crazy too. It can be 1,000 people telling you how wonderfully you did, telling how you blessed their lives, and one comment that's negative. And it's almost like it cancels out everything you've heard.
Everything.
And so then that becomes the fight. You got to fight against that voice. But that's why I've heard many preachers say, don't let the applause nor the criticism move you. You got to stay committed
Keep your
to one.
ears connected to God's mouth.
Yes. So after 2017 with that stroke, and they talked about your heart, the function decreasing. Where did it go next?
After that stroke, it medicines and treatment and here it goes. Here it is. 2018. I went through 2017. 2018 hit me again.
Another stroke?
Yeah.
So how many have you had? Okay.
3. Another stroke in 2018. And in that 2018.
But hold on though, because another 3 strokes, but you're walking, you're talking plainly, you got the use and activity of all your limbs. God is good.
I went blind in Bible study. That's how I knew I was sitting in Bible study, and all of a sudden I went blind. And I raised my hand and said, Bishop, where God put me. Had I not been where God put me, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. But my spiritual father, the man of God, that God had me to sit up
Yes.
I said, Bishop, I can't see. My sight. He was teaching, and he stopped the class and anointed my eyes. Came back open. Stayed in Bible study. Stayed in Bible study and went to the ER afterwards. Went to the ER, and that's what they said. It was a TIA. It was a mini stroke.
Okay.
And that's when things began to happen.
Okay.
That year, things went, after that situation happened, I ended up going to New York, stay with my auntie for me and Jessica took us a trip.
Okay.
To New York.
Okay.
Place we'd never been before. And got to New York, came back from New York, and was going, maybe a week after I came from New York, I was at a restaurant in Johnston called the Chicken Place. And getting ready to go in the chicken place, and boom, I fell out. My defibrillator went off. Then they took me to the ER, stayed in the hospital, did maybe 8 days in the hospital. My doctor came in and said, your family should have been planning your funeral. Your heart completely stopped. And they didn't understand what. And this is some of the healing process that I began. My defibrillator was going off so often. If I thought about anything that I went through, the trigger, the trauma, it'll shut it. It'll start it off. Shut up. It got to the point so bad that I couldn't. It happened when I was driving. Couldn't drive no more. It happens. I couldn't even put on my own clothes. I couldn't even get myself a bag. My baby had to help me. I couldn't do anything.
Right.
The defibrillator would go shut off. And anybody know anything about it, it shocks you. And it'll knock me out. So my daughter, Jessica, was a little girl, had to help her mama. Then I had nurses in and out to help. And the doctor said, we don't know what's going on. He called his friend and said, I got this young lady, she's a good woman. And I don't know what to do with her. I need you to come see her. I need you to see her. And so they told me next time that the defibrillator went off, come to Charleston. Because he going to meet me there.
Okay.
He's out of Chicago.
Okay.
And so it started going off. It went off often. It went off in December. It went off 21 times.
Huh?
I was blessed today. I said, how in the world are you walking? How in the world are you doing the things that you do? Because it went off that many times. I couldn't hardly move or anything. So
Now, were you still singing during this time?
I was singing in church and it went off. And got back up and bitch said, don't you sing no more. And guess what I did? Kept on singing. I would sit down and sing.
I remember seeing one of those sit downs.
That was at Greater Young Zion Women's Conference. I just got out of the hospital, 2 days out of the hospital, and was sitting down, singing. I still sang, knowing I could feel it shaking. I remember talking about it. Went to a women's conference in the mountains, and in the mountains, I had to have someone to be with me. But I didn't turn down the assignment because I knew it was an assignment. And I think it was Pastor Antonio Williams and Prophetess Angel Williams. We both was on the same conference in the mountains. And they stayed next door to me and they said,
Okay.
woman of God, do you ever go to, we heard you sing and pray all night. No. They didn't. A lot of people didn't understand that's how I survived. But even in the mountains, I would sing. I'd sit down and sing. Sis, I sat down and sang, and the power of God moved so it shut all the lights in the mountain shut down. I was like, wow. The enemy wanted to kill, but I wouldn't die.
Right.
I wouldn't die. It shut down the lights in the mountains. I was doing praise and worship, sitting down, and the lights shut everything. And it came back on midnight. We had to turn our phones on.
Really?
To have service.
Wow.
But that's not the first time it's done it. I've been in several areas and I begin to do praise and worship and it shuts down the electricity. I was at I opened up for Brian Courtney Wilson. I forgot what year that was. We was at Tabernacle. And I began to do praise and worship and the whole transformer blew out down the road. We had to sing with no electric or nothing. But see, when the enemy can't touch you, he'll try to stop you.
Right.
But the thing about it, and I'm crazy enough, you can do whatever you want to do. As long as I can open my mouth.
Right.
You can't stop me.
Right.
But saying all that to say was at the mountains and singing, sitting down singing and this was 2018 and the thing was so finally it went off and they took me to Charleston. While in Charleston, during that year, my ex-husband, he was sick. At the beginning of that year, even after I had that stroke in 2018, he went blind. And I was taking him to the doctors.
Okay.
Then in August, when we came back from New York, he called the girls around and he told us he had cancer. And it was so, because I was sick too, I would go in the hospital. When I go in, he came out. When he came out, I went in. When I went in, he came out. So my babies was my children was under great stress. Because I didn't know if they're going to lose their mama and dad at the same time. Because both of our situations was very life-threatening. So after I went in Charleston, I went in the hospital in Charleston in January. And while in the hospital, I had an encounter with the Father. And I don't care who you are and how God used you. He'll always deal with you about you. And just because he used you don't mean you got it all together.
Right.
God began to deal with me, sis. He began to deal with me. I said, God, what is going on? on? Why is that? Because I had people coming in sharing with me about getting a heart and all of this stuff. And I said, God, why is this going on? And he began to talk to me. He said, you got unforgiveness in your heart. I said, he said, you got to forgive your husband. Not knowing that was part of the assignment for his life and for us being together, because even after all of this happened in our lives, God never disconnected me from him because of the assignment that I had concerning him. And so even in the hospital, I went through deliverance in that hospital. And the doctor came in the next day he had to do a procedure because I needed, oblation is when they cut away around your heart. And it's so spiritual. They're talking about the circumcision of the heart. That's exactly what it is in the natural. They cut the extra part around. And this is what God does in our heart. He circumcised. He cut away all this stuff because the heart is wicked and deceitful. Who can know the heart but God? But I test the reins of your heart. But he said, I'll put a new spirit in you, and I give you a new heart, and I'll take away the stony heart and give you a heart of flesh. At that moment, I had a stony heart. And God began to share, you got to forgive. And I said, God, whatever you need to do, get it out of me. And I went through deliverance in the house, but my mama's sitting over there. Now normally when it's spiritual things, she on it. But she dead asleep, and here I am going through deliverance and coughing up and just really going through deliverance by myself, me and God. Literally heard the enemy growling because he didn't want me to come out of that, because the enemy had a plan for me and Jermaine. As I first stated, he was a man of faith. And we know God is married to the backslider. And so when the doctor came in the next day, he said, what I went in to see, he said, after he did the surgery, what I went in to see, I didn't see. He said, so I came out. I repaired your valve and I came out. He took me off. I was on 22 pills a day.
22 pills.
I couldn't miss not one because it kept my heart in a certain rhythm so that thing wouldn't go off. So I had to keep a schedule every time, the same time. If I get off a little bit, I can feel it. Then to go off. So he took me and he said, I'm taking you off all the medicines. I left that hospital. A week later, I was able to, my husband was staying with his brother. I was able to drive and do the things for him that I couldn't do for myself. His last few months of his life, I would go there and I would get in there. He was in such pain. I would get the oil and lay, because because the enemy he wanted to do a double whammy. He wanted to kill us both, but he didn't kill Jermaine. God took him.
Right.
Because even in that moment of me forgiving him, he came back to church. Bishop Williams came. He would say, "You're my miracle." He gave his life back to Christ.
Thank you, Lord.
And he was coming to church, and soon he couldn't go like he was. But the thing about it, sis, had I not went through what I went through, I wouldn't have known I had unforgiveness, which would cause him to forfeit to forfeit the assignment for his soul, for his life. And even in the midst of that, was able to take care of him and feed him and take care of his son Jeremiah, which is like my son. I love him to this day. I still spend time with him. But in order for me to be able, for him to see the love of God in me, I had to let it go.
Yes.
Some people would have did him like the Diary of a Mad Black Woman. But that wasn't in my spirit.
Right.
It was the love of God that covered my heart.
Yes.
And I was able to do for him the things that I could not do for myself.
Right.
Them last few months, and that was the last face he saw before he left here. And before he went into his organs started shutting down, I was the last face he saw. And when he saw me walk in the room, because he was asking my brother-in-law, where's Jen? Where's Jen? He needed to see me. And his first words to me was, pray, Jen, pray. And I laid on him. And I prayed that God give him peace. Then his organs started shutting down. I told him, don't be afraid. Organs started shutting down. And so in the midst of him being on life support, we sang and we prayed. And then we decided to take him off. And we continued to sing and pray. And in the midst of us singing and praying, he stood up and lifted his hands, and you saw the glory of God. He was just, they got him off life support. We were just waiting for his last breath.
Yeah.
But he lifted up himself and threw his hands up. You saw the glory of God. And when he fell back in a few minutes, that's when he gave up. The Lord took him. And the Lord began to speak and said, death has been swallowed up in victory.
Yes.
In the midst of it, the opposed, the one that I went through all this stuff with, my assignment, the enemy wanted to forfeit the assignment for his life. But he couldn't do it, because when God chose you, see, we got to realize we don't choose ourselves. God chooses us.
Right.
And God chose him. And I believe that he made it. Because the Lord said death has been swallowed up in victory. He died on Resurrection Sunday.
Okay.
And I began to, when me and Jessica got ready to go home and leave this hospital.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you've been blessed by today's show, feel free to let us know. And if you'd like to sow into this ministry, become a sponsor, or contact us, you can reach us at 803-221-0169. Or you can email us at the SSBBshow@gmail.com. Let's continue this journey together. We need and would love to have you as a sponsor. Absolutely no gift is too small. Please note the info regarding giving and help us spread these testimonies around the world.